One thing that we're comfortable with most of the time is failing. I can tell you I've been in so many meetings with both Bill and Melinda and have said, that totally failed. It didn't work. But here are the 5 reasons it failed. And they were like, okay, that's really interesting. You learned from that. All right, what are you going to do next? How do you learn from that and how does it improve the next thing?
We can't fix the world alone, but collaborating isn't easy, and systems are allergic to change. So how do we do it without losing our damn minds?
That's what we're here to find out.
I'm English Saul.
I'm Jeff Walker. Welcome to System Catalyst, the podcast that cracks the code for making the world a better place.
Are you a system catalyst who can't find a donor that believes in your vision? Or maybe you're a donor struggling to find the kinds of projects or people you want to invest in. Everyone in the field of philanthropy knows that the relationship between funders and nonprofit leaders can be complicated, which is a real shame because the consequences can be devastating. Thankfully, our guest has been working on this very problem. Jennifer Alcorn is the Deputy Director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And for years, she's been thinking of really ingenious ways to streamline, strengthen, and overall improve the relationships between donors and grantees. The end goal? To get as much money as possible to the right projects quickly. On today's show, she explains her efforts to make philanthropy more accessible and shares her experience dealing with failure. She also gives some practical advice on how to get donors and keep them. If you approach donor meetings like Thanksgiving dinner with the difficult side of the family, keep listening. Tell me about kind of at what point in that journey, if there was a moment or kind of a arc or a story that really sort of made you feel like, there's some interesting complexities in this system, the system of philanthropy.
Yeah.
And I might be uniquely positioned to kind of move some systems around or add value to kind of system change in the world of stewarding capital.
It's a good question. I would say that really came into play once I got to the Gates Foundation in 2008, and I could see, I was sitting in and I still do sit in a very unique position where I'm talking to funders and philanthropists about what they're interested in and what they're looking for. And then I'm talking to the grantees and the implementers about what they need and what they're doing. And sometimes they talk past one another, but I was in this unique position to sit in between them and to be able to say, oh, well, I think this person is interested in that, or this organization is doing that. And I could matchmake and facilitate in a way that they may not have come together in the same way because of that. So I think that's one piece. The other piece where I think I have a superpower, I like to think of it as a superpower of just being super curious and wanting to solve problems, which probably makes me a very type A person. But quite often I would find that I would be working with a philanthropist or their organization in another country, and they'd say, well, actually, I can only fund in my country. I can't move money across the border. So I can only fund if that organization sits in my country. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is kind of mind-boggling because in this international kind of philanthropy system, often the organizations that are doing the work in country are not based in the country or able to take money in those countries. And so you find these kind of cross-border giving issues where you have both supply and demand meeting, but money is not able to move. And so that's been one of those things. It's a nugget that I've been working on for the last 16 years because it drives me crazy if you have intent and you can't actually put it into action.
So it sounds like you're really just bridge building. And that to me in itself is an entire system, right? It's like that we have come so far, from the kind of movement of capital into different ways that we steward it, but yet we have so much further to go and actually taking all the capital that sits over here and distributing it throughout the world to really address some problems. So tell me a little bit about how in your position and with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, how are you guys thinking about that? How are you doing that? Like, what are some of the aha moments you've had over the last couple of years? And what are some of the struggles that you still have?
Oh my gosh. So there's so many ways we're trying to tackle this because we're also overachievers at the foundation. I don't know if anybody knows that, but if you didn't, we like to overachieve at everything. There's a couple of ways that we've tried to do this. So in the philanthropy space, in one place in particular that we've done that is around setting up our own 501c3 public charity that is led by the foundation. It's called Gates Philanthropy Partners. And that helped us overcome a challenge where we were talking with philanthropists, and the philanthropists would say, but I don't want to have to manage this. I'm not an expert in polio eradication. You are the expert. And so what we were able to do by setting up this organization was to say, you're right, we are the experts in polio eradication. We can accept your funding and we'll manage it on your behalf and work directly with the grantees who we're working with anyways, because we're funding them at these levels. And so we actually were able to do that with a set of partners who said, yes, we want to come along with you, do this amazing thing, try to eradicate a disease, you manage it. And so that we did through Gates Philanthropy Partners. And what that's also done is it's allowed us to open up the foundation to anyone who wants to give alongside the foundation. So we get donations from as much of $1 or $5 from a kid who's donating their allowance, people who are giving through their workplace giving programs, all the way up into the philanthropists who are giving to polio eradication or single shot cure for HIV. And so that's been one solution that we've come up with to try to break down some of those barriers. Another way that we've tried to tackle this is through collaborative giving. And we look at that in a couple of different ways. So we think about collaborative funds as, how can philanthropists come into an issue, something they're new to, and really rely on a great organization to help them come into a journey and do the grant making, kind of walk them through an entire process, bring them out the other side as really understanding the issue from multiple perspectives, while also having an impact, which is just great. If we open our doors and say to philanthropists, hey, if you're interested in something we work on, come over to the foundation. Let's have a conversation. We'll do the briefings. We'll meet the wonky experts who are going to talk to you about intestinal worms more than you ever wanted to know. But come learn with us. There's no expectation, but just learn, and maybe it inspires you to do something. And we found that people would come and they would get inspired. And then I'll also say that we work with other foundations to encourage them to do the same thing, because none of this work should be behind brick walls or siloed. It should be out there for anybody who believes in what an organization is doing to be able to do it with them and rely on them to do that work.
With Gates Philanthropy Partners, Jennifer has helped democratize philanthropic giving. You no longer have to be a millionaire or have all the right connections to give money effectively. On top of that, the program educates funders on where their money is going. It's a refreshing and powerful new model that's becoming more popular and having a real impact. Okay, let's get back to the tricky donor-beneficiary relationship. One thing Jennifer advocates for is more tough conversations, especially when things aren't working out so well.
So many times it's easier said than done. Let's be honest. It's always easier when you think about it up front and then you get into it and it's messy. It's always messy and you have the highs and the lows. It's almost always worth it. But it's like a marriage or family. It's always going to be a little messy and there's going to be feelings in there. And, but at the end of the day, it's a good thing. I'll maybe point to one, actually very early on at my time at the foundation. I was actually, I think, the second advocacy program officer on neglected tropical diseases, because I've done a lot of different things at the foundation and wear many hats. And neglected tropical diseases are also very close to my heart. And we were working with an organization that, and this also speaks to the partnership piece, that we were asking to do something that they just weren't equipped to do, to kind of bring together this NTD's community and try to overcome some of the past issues and competition and things that have been happening. And there was a certain point where I just took a step back and realized this isn't the right organization to do this. And we have to be honest with ourselves and we have to be honest with them that we're asking them to do something that this isn't their expertise. There are other groups who have this expertise. In fact, we ended up going and creating a group to have that expertise, which was the End Fund. But we really had to have that hard conversation as partners to say, I know we were asking you to do this. I know you were telling us all the barriers. Let's just sit down and say, like, is this working? It's a relationship, right? And sometimes in a relationship, you have to say, is this working?
I think that's a really important kind of nugget of wisdom. Is like the hard conversations are hard and they're going to be hard and you can't really avoid. Sometimes it reminds me, I don't know if you've ever watched Friends, but there's this episode of Friends where like Phoebe is the one who breaks up with everybody, like for everybody else, because for some reason she does it. And it's like, oh, wait, how did you just do that without it being, it's like and they never tell you how she did it, but it was just like, oh, and I always think about that, even in like the funder relationship, it's just like, this is going to be hard. It's going to be like breaking up with somebody, but time is like a balm.
Yeah.
And how do these things go on and how do you remain respectful and how also do you do it with dignity? I think that's one of the biggest learnings I've had as a philanthropist is that often when there's a moment of tension, it's not actually usually about the entity or what the entity is doing. It's about me, or it's about what we're doing, or something behind the scenes with what's going on with our prioritization.
Yes.
And how do you make that really clear in those conversations? Like, actually, you guys are doing great work. We just have to reprioritize over here. But it's hard. You know what else is hard? Failure. And because failure makes it harder for an organization to get funding, some of them avoid it like the plague. But Jennifer argues for another approach.
One thing that we're comfortable with most of the time is failing and saying, I can tell you, I've been in so many meetings with both Bill and Melinda and have said, that totally failed. It didn't work. But here are the 5 reasons it failed. And they were like, okay, that's really interesting. You learned from that. All right, what are you going to do next? How do you learn from that and how does it improve the next thing? Like, the reason why I focus on collaborative giving now is because I really failed big time in trying to set up a collaborative fund very early in my tenure. And I can point to that exact moment and saying, okay, here are all the things that I could have done differently, what I didn't think about. So the donor collaborative that we set up originally, or the first one that I really set up at the foundation, failed for a few reasons. One was that our expectations were just completely out of whack. Like, we just thought that donors would come in without understanding an issue and be willing to give at high levels to it and to not have much in return beyond a report about how things were going. And I think I knew innately that that wouldn't work. And so we moved forward with that kind of framework, and it didn't work. And so we had to be honest. And I like to talk about it a lot as a failure because it was so important for the foundation to take a look at itself and its expectations and say, we didn't listen to donors. We didn't listen to what the market wanted or what the market needed. We put out something that we wanted and what we thought we needed, and it didn't work. So the next thing we do isn't going to be that because it has to listen to the market, has to listen to the donor, has to listen to the grantees. And I actually remember the foundation's first CEO, Patty Stonecipher, as I was walking her through this, she said to me, "Oh, your next one is going to be so much better because you've learned so much from this one." And she is an advocate for failing. And that was a big kind of thing early in the earlier days of the Gates Foundation. And the next thing we did, super successful. But we had to be in that place to do that. And we had to fail in order to get there. So I think it's a natural thing. Nobody wants to fail. I think we should fail more.
And what would you offer as advice to especially philanthropists out there who are maybe more worried about the risk of failing?
No matter what you do, there's some risk involved in it. And I think the question for philanthropists and when I have conversations with people is, are you still going to have good outcomes even if there are some risks? Are you still going to get kids vaccinated? Are you still going to make sure that there's community health workers in this area of Ethiopia? If there's still good things that are happening and people are being helped and things are moving forward, then the risk is absolutely worth it. And you're probably not going to fail at all of it. There might be some pieces of it that don't work, but the other pieces still do, and they won't happen unless you do it. So we need more people just to do things and to be okay that there are associated risks with them. And you overcome the risks as you evolve it. And that's, I guess, the other piece in all of this is that nothing is static. As you're funding something, it's going to change. And what you think it's going to be on day one, certainly different on year two. And you have to adapt as you go. And having that flexibility of your own mindset and with the partners you're working with is so critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that you're right. I mean, I think that at least in my experience, it's actually we didn't fail. We just reoriented what success looked like. When you think about collaboration and, Gates it's a huge organization, right? I mean, it's one of the biggest in the space. And when you're thinking about how you want to show up and how you want to collaborate to ensure that, or at least attempt that those power dynamics are not as much at play, how do you think about your relationship to distributing funds or funding those who are really proximate to problems?
Yeah, it's a hard question, to be honest, because I think we're in our own journey on learning how to do that. And I see a lot of our program teams, now that we're no longer in a pandemic, on the ground, meeting with different organizations, really understanding what those organizations are doing and how they're doing it, and how we might be able to bring that expertise into the strategies that we've created, and how can we kind of mutually reach outcomes that we're both aiming for. I think on the research and development, kind of more upstream, say vaccine or drug development side of things, it can be harder to do. What I have found is we are really cognizant that it's hard to do. And so we're looking at different ways of how do you bring these skills, say, to the continent of Africa? How are we doing this in India or other parts of Southeast Asia so that the actual R&D is more proximate? So we're really trying to think through those things. I would say we're maybe a third of the way there, and that we have a lot to learn, but you'll also see that we have far more offices now in Africa than we've had before. We have an office in India. We have an office in China. So we're really trying to place ourselves where the work is happening so that we can start identifying and be more proximate to the people who are doing the work. We're looking at who are the people with the lived experience, who are the people in the communities, who knows these communities best, who knows the governments best. And I've seen that shift really come around in the last, I would say probably in the last 5 years for sure. And it's good. It's pretty exciting to go. I got to go to the field in Rwanda about a month and a half ago and really to meet the partners that are working on the ground, who live there, who live the work, who are driving across the country, a couple of times a week. And it's fun to see that you're not just seeing a lot of the international NGOs send somebody into Kigali for the week. It's actually the people who live there and know the work and know the people.
Yeah. Which is really crucial in sort of these aspects that we've brought up a lot kind of on this show around building trust, right? And so when it's, just me and I'm just sort of popping in and I'm like, oh, hey, look at this great new gadget I have on my phone. It's going to help you collect all your medical data. And these people are like, neat. You're the 8th person to come today with this, And I think that the trust building aspect is just so critical. And I've been able to bear witness, I think, to a lot of the ways in which you all have kind of tried to navigate that and maneuver that and start to really put some stakes in the ground that are influencing the space around wanting to build those bonds. And I think also wanting to sort of figure out how philanthropy and philanthropists can really be a passenger in the journey of the problem solving and not necessarily always be the leader or the captain. So Jen, as we sort of start to wrap up, I'm wondering what advice you might have for grantees or nonprofits or social entrepreneurs or even system catalysts who are looking for resources, who are looking for partners and are taking on some big, really complicated stuff that has a pretty high failure rate.
Yeah.
What would your advice to them be if they were coming to you saying, I think you should fund my thing?
I get that a lot.
I bet.
I know it's not surprising. Yeah, I think and it goes back to the clarity piece, be really clear about what you're trying to achieve. And I'll say that as the first piece, because so often we'll get a proposal or we'll have a conversation and people are dancing around what they're doing. And even if it's complex, it's pretty simple about what they're trying to achieve. And so be really crisp and clear about it. And then make sure that you're doing the research about the person or group you're talking to so that you know what their interests are, what kind of business leader might they have been, how do they invest, really know, try to understand their mindset and put yourself into their shoes as much as you can to really understand how you want to present something to them. Because there are going to be some philanthropists who are like, yes, I love the risk. I love that this is totally crazy and it could totally fail, but let's do it, because that's how they operated their startup and became, billionaire. And then there's some that are very cautious and want all of the details. So know who you're talking to, and then be honest about what the success or failure rate can be. Here are the things we know that this could fail at any of these points. Here's how we're mitigating them. That also helps people, and better for them to know that you knew ahead of time the places where it could fail and that you had a plan for them than being kind of surprised at the end of oh, hold on, you didn't anticipate that. How well could you have known this work or this problem? And then as that, I would always say, be clear that there are unintended consequences and risks. So maybe the last thing is approach people like they are your partner from the beginning and not like they're a funder, because for the most part, people want to be your partner. and they have a lot to offer outside of their money. And that a lot of these people are really big systems thinkers. And if they can think about systems in terms of, supply chains and marketing and all of this, they may have a lot that they can give and add to in the problem that you're trying to solve too. Some of it may be crazy, but some of it may be really, really worth it.
That's it for today's show. Please don't forget to subscribe to System Catalysts so you don't miss out on a new episode. Also, do us a huge favor by rating our podcast and leaving us a review. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll catch you all in the next episode. Before we go, we'd like to thank our producers at Hueman Group Media. We'd also like to thank our incredible network of partners who are supporting our mission: the Skoll Foundation, the Aspen Institute's Global Leadership Network, Echoing Green, DRK Foundation, Maverick Collective, Virgin Unite, Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project, Boldly Go Philanthropy, Synergos, Forward Global, Nexus, and New Profit. If you are interested in becoming a System Catalyst and would like to learn more about our partners, please visit systemcatalysts.com.